The weekend is over. Here are tonight's main courses. Exoplanet found. New neighborhood watch scheme required. CIA jazz hands. Shock horror. And moviegoers in synchronized soundtrack scandal. Plus, later in the program, a special report from our fashion correspondent, where we ask, is the nude look really suitable for farming? Those are the headlines. Now back to the asylum.
Newsbang, the king of spades, dealing fact from the top. Date 1995.
Scientists have discovered a planet orbiting another star, proving once and for all that Earth is not the center of the universe, which, frankly, should come as no surprise to anyone who's ever looked at a map.
The planet, named 51 Pegasi b, is described as a gas giant, a sort of cosmic hot air balloon, with a surface temperature hot enough to melt lead, making it a less than ideal vacation destination unless you're a fan of saunas and heavy metal music.
Dr. Michael Mayer, one of the discoverers, stated, "This is a major breakthrough. We may finally be on the verge of discovering extraterrestrial life." Or, as leading astrophysicist Dr. Sheila Wobble put it, do they have cable?
Meanwhile, conspiracy theorists are having a field day. Barry Beamyup, local tinfoil hat enthusiast, insists that this is clearly a government hoax designed to distract us from the impending reptilian invasion. He may have a point.
1976.
It appears the CIA has been caught with its hand in the cookie jar, or, more accurately, a passenger jet full of Cuban athletes. On this day, in 1976, Cubana Flight 455 was blown out of the sky, killing all 73 people on board.
Eyewitnesses report seeing the plane erupt into a giant fireball. One bystander, Ernesto Guevara, no relation, exclaimed, "Holy smokes, it's raining Cubans."
The CIA, it seems, had concluded that the best way to destabilize Cuba was to eliminate its pole vaulting team. A curious strategy, to say the least.
When questioned about their involvement, CIA spokesperson John Smith, and yes, that is his real name, issued the following statement. "We categorically deny any involvement whatsoever."
1927.
The world of entertainment was turned on its ear today with the release of The Jazz Singer, a motion picture that actually talked. Audiences across the nation were left speechless. Or, more accurately, they were speechless until they regained their composure and started screaming.
Eyewitnesses describe scenes of pandemonium as moviegoers, unprepared for the onslaught of synchronized sound, fled theaters in terror. "It was like the actors were trapped inside the screen," cried Ethel Finkelstein, 73 of Brooklyn. "Get me out of here."
The film's star, Al Jolson, was hailed as a visionary by some, a demon by others. Local priest Father O'Malley condemned the film as an instrument of Satan, declaring, "If God had intended us to hear moving pictures, he would have given us longer ear trumpets."
Meanwhile, silent film actors, faced with the sudden obsolescence of their craft, reportedly began hoarding title cards and practicing their charades. Charlie Chaplin, through his mustachioed interpreter, declined to comment.
The Newsbang, exposing the naked truth, one lie at a time.
For a weather forecast more chaotic than a ferret in a fancy dress shop, it's the wondrous Shakanaka Giles.
Good evening, viewers. Down south, prepare for a proper drenching. We're talking rain so heavy it could sink a battleship. Best grab your ark building kit, folks. It's going to be biblical. Over in the Midlands, the wind's playing silly buggers. 1 minute, it's a gentle breeze. The next, it's a howling gale that could blow your socks off. And straight to Skegness. Hold onto your hats, your wigs, and your sanity. And up north, it's colder than a penguin's flippers. We're talking temperatures that could freeze the snot in your nose, dig out those woolly jumpers, your long johns, and maybe a hot water bottle or two, and that's all the weather.
My sealed 1762.
Shiver me timbers. It's 1762 and the British are having a right old knees up in Manila. They've nicked the city from those Spanish chaps, who were apparently too busy having siestas to notice the redcoats sneaking in. We go live now to our man on the ground, Brian Bastable, who's dodging cannonballs and pilfered paella. Brian, what's the state of play in this colonial caper?
Martin, Manila's a mess. Imagine a piñata party hosted by a pack of drunken pirates. The streets are awash with looted trinkets, spilled sangria, and the occasional severed limb. Those British lads are celebrating like they've just won the lottery, which, considering the amount of gold they've nicked, they probably have. The Spanish, bless their siesta-loving souls, are looking a bit shell-shocked. I just saw a conquistador wandering around in his pajamas asking if anyone's seen his parrot. It's not quite the image of imperial dominance they were hoping for. Admiral Cornish and General Draper are strutting around like peacocks, Martin, their chests puffed out and their noses held high. They've declared martial law, which basically means anyone caught without a Union Jack gets a bayonet up the backside. It's a bit draconian, but effective. This victory's a real game changer, Martin. A right royal kick in the Spanish crown jewels. The British are now top dogs in the East Indies, and they're not going to give up their prize without a fight. This is Brian Bastable, Newsbang, signing off from a city that's gone from Spanish siesta to British bonanza. Back to you, Martin, before I get shanghaied onto a galleon bound for Blighty.
1976.
On this day in 1976, Cubana Flight 455 plummeted from the skies, taking with it 73 souls, including Cuba's brightest athletic hopes. The CIA's fingerprints, it seems, were all over this airborne tragedy. Former operatives Carolis and Bosch played starring roles in this geopolitical drama, leaving us to ponder. Was this a case of the puppet master losing control of its strings? The incident sent shockwaves through US-Cuba relations, leaving a trail of unanswered questions and unprosecuted perpetrators. For more on this explosive story, we turn to our crime correspondent, Ken Schitt.
Ladies and gentlemen, strap yourselves in for a tale of terror that'll make your blood run colder than a polar bear's piss. Back in '76, when disco was king and bell-bottoms were a crime against humanity, something far more sinister was brewing in the skies above the Caribbean. Cubana Flight 455 packed tighter than a sardine can with 73 souls, including Cuba's entire fencing team, sharp with blades, but not sharp enough to parry the oncoming storm of shit about to rain down on them. 2 bombs, planted by the Coordination of United Revolutionary Organizations, a fancy name for a bunch of trigger-happy bastards with CIA connections, turned that plane into a fireball faster than you can say, geopolitical clusterfuck. These grade A assholes, led by the likes of Luis Posada Caroles and Orlando Bosch, thought they'd play God and decide who lives and who dies. Well, congratulations, boys. You've just won the biggest Dickheads of the Decade award. But here's the kicker, folks. The CIA had advance intel on this crap show and did sweet fuck all to stop it. Makes you wonder who's really pulling the strings in this puppet show of death, doesn't it? So here we are, decades later, and justice is still playing hide-and-seek. The perpetrators are dodging prosecution like Neo dodges bullets in The Matrix, and the victims' families are left holding their dicks, wondering when karma's gonna catch up with these sons of bitches. This is Ken Schitt, reminding you that in this world of shit, sometimes the biggest turds float to the top.
1908.
And now, A look back at this day in 1908, when Austria-Hungary's annexation of Bosnia and Herzegovina sparked a crisis that would reshape European politics. The move inflamed tensions with Russia and Serbia, stoking nationalist fires within the empire itself. As the balance of power teetered, diplomatic relations strained to breaking point. The once mighty Ottoman Empire, now a shadow of its former self, could only watch from the sidelines. This crisis would prove a harbinger of the conflicts to come, as nationalist movements gained momentum, slowly eroding Austria-Hungary's grip on power. For more on this pivotal moment in history, we turn to our political correspondent, Hardiman Pesto.
Martin, I'm here in Sarajevo, where the mood is tense following Austria-Hungary's sudden annexation of Bosnia and Herzegovina. The streets are abuzz with whispers and worried glances.
Pesto, can you give us a sense of the local reaction? Are there protests? Celebrations?
Well, Martin, it's a bit hard to tell. The locals seem to be expressing their feelings through interpretive dance. I've seen at least 3 people pirouetting angrily in the town square.
Interpretive dance? Pesto, are you sure you're not confusing political unrest with a local arts festival?
Absolutely not, Martin. I've been told by a very reliable source, a man selling novelty fezzes, that this is how Bosnians traditionally voice their displeasure. Oh, and here comes someone now who might be able to shed more light on the situation.
Hello, I'm Professor Helga von Schnitzelbahn, expert in Balkan geopolitics.
Professor, what's your take on this annexation? How will it affect relations between Austria-Hungary and other powers in the region?
Well, it's a complex situation. Russia and Serbia are...
Excuse me, Professor, but I couldn't help noticing you're wearing ballet shoes. Are you planning to join the protest dances?
What? No, I'm not. These are just comfortable for walking on cobblestones.
Pesto, can we please focus on the actual political situation? Professor, you were saying about Russia and Serbia?
Yes. As I was saying, Russia and Serbia are likely to view this annexation as a provocative act.
Martin, breaking news. A group of disgruntled citizens has just performed a particularly aggressive pas de deux outside the governor's mansion.
Pesto, for the last time, there are no protest dances. Professor, please continue.
Thank you. The annexation is likely to increase tensions significantly. We may see diplomatic...
Oh my, Martin, you won't believe this. A furious man just did a perfect grand jet right over a police barricade.
That's it, Pesto. I'm cutting this short before you start telling us about angry Cossacks doing the can-can. Professor von Schnitzelbahn, thank you for your patience. Pesto, when we return, I expect a full report, and not a single mention of tutus or arabesques. Understood?
Understood, Martin. Though I must say the arabesque epidemic here is truly...
That's all from Sarajevo. Coming up after the break, we'll be discussing the latest developments in women's suffrage, hopefully without any references to synchronized swimming.
1989.
On this day in 1989, the streets of San Francisco's Castro district erupted in chaos as 200 police officers transformed a peaceful AIDS protest into a scene of brutality. The incident, now infamously known as the Castro Sweep, saw over 60 arrests and countless injuries, leaving the LGBTQ community reeling. Was it a case of mistaken identity? Did the police think they were raiding a leather bar? For more on this story, we cross to our American correspondent, Melody Wintergreen.
San Francisco, 1989. The Castro District, a beacon of hope and resilience for the LGBTQ community, is now a battlefield. Melody Wintergreen here, where the air is thick with tear gas, the streets are stained with blood, and the sound of sirens is a haunting symphony of injustice. A peaceful protest by ACT UP demanding action on the AIDS crisis has turned into a nightmare. The San Francisco Police Department, those supposed guardians of peace, have descended on the Castro like a pack of wolves, turning a die-in into a beatdown. Businesses are shuttered, residents are trapped, and activists are lying bloodied and battered on the sidewalks. The cries of police brutality are met with the deafening roar of indifference. Women's League firebrand Taya Peachman is here, denouncing the violence, vowing that this community will not be silenced. But will anyone listen? The SFPD? They're singing a different tune. Maintaining order, they call it. But the acrid smell of tear gas tells a different story. This is more than just a crackdown on a protest. It's an attack on a community already under siege by a deadly disease and a government that's turned its back. As the chaos continues, the battle lines are starkly drawn. On one side, a community fighting for its life. On the other, a police force more interested in wielding power than protecting the vulnerable. And in the middle, a reporter trying to make sense of this senseless violence, knowing that the ink on her notepad can't heal the wounds on these streets. This is Melody Wintergreen for Newsbang at the Castro Sweep, where the price of protest is paid in blood and tears.
It's a Newsbang, dancing with deception partnered with the truth.
For an environmental report more horrifying than a plastic six-pack ring strangling a baby seal, it's Penelope Windchime. Penelope, what eco-atrocities are fueling your fury?
Oh, the horror. Tonight, viewers, we mourn a grievous wound inflicted upon Mother Earth. The bombing of the oil tanker Limburg in the Gulf of Aden. On this day in 2002, those environmental terrorists, Al-Qaeda, struck a blow against our precious oceans. Imagine the scene, viewers. The Limburg, a gentle giant sailing peacefully through the waves, ripped apart by a monstrous explosion. Black, viscous oil, the lifeblood of our planet, gushing into the pristine waters, choking marine life, and staining the once pristine beaches. A tragedy of epic proportions. And for what, viewers? To disrupt the flow of oil, to send a message to the West? They call it terrorism, but I call it ecocide. Those poor, innocent sea creatures swimming in a toxic soup of human greed and violence. My heart bleeds for them. This has been Penelope Windchime reminding you that the real enemy is not terrorism, but our addiction to oil. Ditch your cars. Embrace bicycles, and for the love of all that is green and good, stop polluting our planet.
Date 1995.
And now, our science correspondent Calamity Prendeville brings us a special report on a groundbreaking astronomical discovery that has left the scientific community both baffled and amused. Calamity.
Good evening, space enthusiasts. Today marks the anniversary of a monumental discovery that shook the very foundations of British astronomy. In 1995, two plucky scientists, Michel Mayer and Didier Queloz, stumbled upon something extraordinary while tinkering with their homemade telescope, cobbled together from bits of an old BBC Micro and a Sinclair ZX Spectrum.
Using a revolutionary technique they called the wobbly star method, these intrepid stargazers detected a massive planet orbiting the star 51 Pegasi. This celestial body, promptly dubbed 51 Peg-B, or Peggy to its friends, turned out to be a hot Jupiter, not a spicy curry, mind you, but a gas giant cozying up to its sun like a moth to a flame.
The discovery sent shockwaves through the scientific community, with some claiming it was nothing more than a cosmic practical joke. But Mayer and Queloz stood firm, armed with data printouts from their trusty dot matrix printer.
This breakthrough was made possible by British ingenuity, of course. The special planet-detecting algorithm was reportedly inspired by a particularly vigorous game of buckaroo at the Royal Astronomical Society's annual picnic.
Today, Peggy continues to baffle scientists. Is it a giant ball of tea, or perhaps an interstellar pot noodle? Only time and more powerful kettles disguised as telescopes will tell. This is Calamity Prendeville, reminding you that the next time you look up at the night sky, you might just be witnessing history, or last night's curry repeating on you. Good night, stargazers.
Newsbang, putting the ass in mass media. 1927.
And finally, a story that's sure to have you on the edge of your seats, or perhaps standing up and dancing in the aisles. On this day in 1927, the world of cinema was forever changed with the release of The Jazz Singer. This groundbreaking film dared to do what no feature-length motion picture had done before. It spoke. It seems that after years of silent brooding, cinema has finally found its voice. For more, we turn to our culture correspondent, Smithsonian Moss.
Now at this point of the evening, we welcome listeners on FM who've just joined us.
Whoa, Newsbang Nation! It's your girl Smithsonian Moss, and honey, let me tell you, 1927 was a year that'll make your flapper beads swing. Why? Because The Jazz Singer hit the silver screen and changed the game forever. Imagine, if you will, a world where movies were like watching a mime convention, all gestures and exaggerated expressions, but no talking, the horror. But then, bam. The Jazz Singer strutted onto the scene, bringing sound to cinema and making those silent films look like yesterday's news. Okay, so this movie wasn't exactly a musical masterpiece, but it was a technical revolution. It used the Vitaphone sound-on-disc system, which was basically like attaching a record player to a projector. It was clunky. It was primitive. But it worked, baby. And suddenly, audiences were hearing actors talk, sing, and even gasp, crack jokes. It was like the invention of fire, only instead of warmth, we got Al Jolson belting out Mammy in blackface. Yeah, it was a different time. Now, the plot of The Jazz Singer is basically your classic follow your dreams story. You've got Jakey Rabinowitz, a young Jewish cantor's son who's got a voice that could melt a menorah. But instead of chanting Torah, he wants to sing those sinful jazz tunes. Cue the family drama, the forbidden romance, and the inevitable showdown between tradition and modern temptation. It's like a recipe for cinematic gold, honey, even if it's a little cheesy by today's standards. But The Jazz Singer wasn't just a movie. It was a goddamn earthquake that shook the foundations of Hollywood. Suddenly, those silent film stars with their expressive eyes and dramatic gestures were out of a job. The studios scrambled to adopt sound technology, and a new era of talkies was born. It was like the Wild West of cinema, with everyone trying to figure out how to make movies that actually spoke to the audience, literally. So, there you have it, folks. The Jazz Singer, the film that made the mime industry weep, ushered in the era of talkies, and paved the way for the cinematic extravaganzas we know and love today. It's like the OG disruptor of the film industry. And, let's be real, who doesn't love a good underdog story? I mean, the movie was made on a budget of $422,000, which is like nothing compared to the blockbusters of today. But it went on to gross over $2 million, which is like a lot of money back then. It's a fascinating glimpse into a bygone era, a time when movies were silent, the world was simpler, and Al Jolson was a star. Wahoo!
Newsbang, sorting through the mess of life with a spatula and the intent to publish truth alone.
And finally, a look at tomorrow's papers. The Times, Colonial War, Yanks bash Brits in Carolina bash-up. The Independent, Whales stuck in ice, whales of a tail near Point Barrow. There's a map there of Alaska. The Telegraph, Turks lose sea battle, and another one after that. That's all from us tonight. Tomorrow on Newsbang, time travel special, including why last Thursday's audience got older and an exclusive interview with Professor Spacetime. Don't forget to look both ways before crossing the road, unless you're a bird. Good night.
Tune in next time for more artificially intelligent hilarity. Newsbang is a comedy show, written and recorded by AI. All voices impersonated. Nothing here is real. Good night.